Good morning, everyone. Good morning. I hope this finds you well as always. And obviously, you're beginning to say, hold on a moment, this doesn't look like the normal background for Simon. So greetings in this case from Queenstown. I've been down here for a while and actually about to go to Sydney. I'll let you know what that's all about as the program goes on as well. But greetings from Queenstown. It's lovely to have you join me this morning. So it'll be a different background and a different sign. I'd actually tried to see if I could set this up so you could have a view of what was going on, but you can see even from the windows behind me, a camera facing into a window and into the light doesn't do so well. So I can't share with you, unfortunately, the incredible view. But welcome to Solid Ground. Welcome to the show where we talk about the events of usually the last week, things happening both here in New Zealand and around the world. And we do it from a basis of good solid ethics, a basis of faith, and just a basic of good philosophy, a good discussion, a good consistent discussion. If you know any of my writing, so you know I do Substack, for example, it's always about consistency in thinking. I think it's one of the indications, one of the key indications of how we're doing things appropriately or not in society. Is it consistent? And it's one of the reasons too I love doing this show and other shows with Bob and the Family First crew, is that we actually get to debate and discuss things. So if you have any thoughts or comments, please share them. I'm not able for some reason to be able to access easily today live your comments. So frequent listeners will know when you message on the Family First Facebook page. I always get tongue-tied on that. If you're trying to message, normally it comes to me live. I don't have that today, unfortunately, but I will be checking the comments afterwards. So if you're one of those people, and I know there's a wonderful amount of you who are regulars, you can still comment. If you're seeing this on LinkedIn or YouTube, Facebook, wherever, you can comment. Just know that this morning it's not coming live to me, unfortunately. So I won't be asking where you are and saying good morning or taking questions live, unfortunately. But look, we will look forward, and I'll look forward to reading them over the coming hours and respond as best I can. So, guys, there's a lot of topics. Oh, by the way, so people are saying, why am I in Queenstown? Sorry, that'll be, why have I abandoned Auckland? Well, a couple of quick and personal things. Firstly, I've come down here primarily to host live my radio show on Reality Check Radio out of the Queenstown, I was about to say Queensland, Queenstown studio. So RCR obviously has hosts all around the country. So people like myself and Dewa DeBoer in Auckland. You've got the likes of Rodney Hyde and Peter Williams, Paul Brennan, of course, in Queenstown. But there's a wonderful, probably the best set up studio for us here in Queenstown. So I've come down to do shows to do shows, long and short. So that's been a really good experience. On Friday in particular was taking live feedback. We can actually do it via the phone, so like talkback on radio like that, and also via text message, a little bit like what you guys do here. If you type something into Facebook, well in this case people text. So it was actually quite a cool experience. And so that's what's drawn me down here. But I will admit, it's also been a little bit difficult because very sadly, Rachel's mum, my mother-in-law, passed away. And so, as you can imagine, it's been a little bit difficult me being here as that happened, and Rachel and the family up north. So all very sad, but we remember Ruth, that was her name. She had only just turned 86, but now she's with her Creator and her God, and we celebrate that. But you can imagine it's a hard time. So keep Rachel and all the Bridges family and us in your prayers, and that would be incredibly welcome. Look, a few topics to bounce around and on today. I thought I'd start with something I thought was very nice and positive because, everything I've just said is quite heavy. If you're a sports follower or not, you'll know that we've won the America's Cup. Now, I can hear probably sighs from some people who just think it's a rich man's sport. And to be honest, there's a there's a bucket load of money that is required. But if we just park that for a moment, we can be pleased and congratulate the team for an awesome effort. I think they won 7-2, so an absolute convincing victory there. So congratulations to the America's Cup team. Now there's a big debate, big debate of is it going to come back to New Zealand or not, and I see politicians and others are already opining of what should and shouldn't happen. Look, for what it's worth, I mean, I'd love to have it here. I think there's lots of benefits of actually, high performance sport, but a lot of it, understandably, will come down to money. And actually, the likes of the America's Cup team, so it might hold New Zealand's name, but it's ultimately, I think, and I'm happy to be corrected, it's really just a corporation. They need to stump up a lot of the money, or if we're going to have a business case for New Zealand, we're going to make sure that we, the taxpayer, get really a lot of benefit, because these things, as you know, cost a fortune. But anyway, congratulations to the guys. Something to be, I think, very, very excited about. In other good news, and I'm just looking here on the screen to find the image, Tanya Anovich, she is a New Zealand First MP, has just put this piece of law, this is just part of the front cover, into the ballot of Parliament. And as you can see, it's about improving access to palliative care. So it's a great bill, and I'm slightly biased because I used to have that bill. It's actually had quite a lineage. So Tanya's the latest MP to put it in, and it's just marvellous. And I'll quickly talk you through the ballot process as well and what the bill's about. And as I say, I know a bit about the bill because working backwards, I had the bill, then before me, Maggie Barry, and then before that, Todd Muller. I might have that actually around the wrong way. I think Maggie Barry might have been the one who drafted this bill originally, and then when she left Parliament, handed it over to Todd Muller, and then Todd, I think, must have wanted to pick up another bill and handed it over to me. So each of us have tweaked it, and then Tanya's now picked it up in the current Parliament, and I just think that's fantastic, because if you know anything about euthanasia and end-of-life care in general in New Zealand, is that euthanasia is completely and fully funded. Palliative care is not, which is an absolute shocker. And so this bill does at least two things. One is saying that the government needs to fund more money, which is really, really important. And the other is to make sure that there's a more equitable services. You might have heard in Solid Ground, I can't remember if it was last week or the week before, I was talking about all the faults that have been identified by whistleblowers who sit on the review committee. So these are two doctors, an academic doctor and a medical doctor, who are two of the three people who sit on the Euthanasia Review Board or panel committee, whatever you want to call it. They've become whistleblowers. They've outed a whole myriad of problems, everything from a person who didn't speak English being euthanized without an interpreter, that reports were blank, the reports between what the doctor said and wrote didn't make sense, so a whole lot of issues. But one they came across was that it seemed a lot more people were being euthanized in rural areas versus urban. And in this case, they wanted more information, and the Ministry of Health told them to basically bugger off. It tells you a lot about the ministry. But what they were getting towards, and it's anecdotal at the moment because they don't have the evidence, but myself and others have sensed this for a long time as well, is that there isn't, just to go back to this bill, the equitable access. And you'll see there something in the middle says locality plans. Long and short, part of what this bill's trying to do is say we need to have better access to the likes of palliative care in rural areas. Because one of the big issues at the moment, as I say, not particularly well funded, the palliative care side, but also, if you live in rural areas, it's not so accessible. And as we sadly are seen in New Zealand, then it seems to be leading some Kiwis to taking on euthanasia, which is really sad. Anyway, congratulations to Tanya. I just think it's fantastic that she's done this, and I'm just very, very grateful. And speaking of that, I'm trying to find it here in front of me, and of course I can't when I find, a little bit more update on the euthanasia front. So kudos to Isaac Davidson still. You know that I will throw bricks at the media quite often around their behaviour, and we're actually going to talk about a bit of media bias this morning. Could be a staple discussion, but kudos to Isaac for continuing to actually focus on euthanasia through his reporting. And he's just drawing out here a little bit more of what those whistleblowers had to say. And as I say, if you want to find out more, feel free to go to my Substack or to Bob McCoskey's Substack. Both of us in recent days have written about what the whistleblowers have said. But he's drawing out here that there's over 200 reports that the committee has not reviewed. Now, just remember, David Seymour and other pro-death advocates had made a big thing that there's lots of safeguards. And one of the big things they stress, there's this review panel. There's going to be these 3 people. They'll look at all the reports, and if there's any issues, they'll identify them. Well, as the whistleblowers have pointed out, the committee, I think it was for 7 months, did not sit because there weren't enough people. You only need 3 people, but they have struggled to actually find 3 of them. And so cases were not being reviewed. So over 200 cases have not been reviewed. And let's be clear, it's quite possible there's nothing in them. But it's an important safeguard. Okay, it's an important safeguard. Well, that's what it's been put to us. But it's not functioning, and that's probably the most central point in all of this. So look, long and short, anyone starts telling you euthanasia is operating perfectly fine in New Zealand, there's no problems, well, basically they're either ignorant or they're lying. Because you can't say something's working if it's not been properly reviewed. And as we've pointed out, there's been a number of issues already identified. And I made a sort of a facetious comment on social media about it, that this is a review not of people choosing between a blue pen and a green pen, something as basic as that, or whether they should be changing what bleach is used to clean the hospitals. This is about a law which allows New Zealanders to be killed early, or have their lives ended prematurely. Now, whether it's prematurely by hours, days, weeks, months, years is in many ways irrelevant, but euthanasia, by definition, ends a life prematurely. And as I keep saying, even if you're someone who's sympathetic to euthanasia as a concept, you should be alarmed by this. We're talking about the life and death of over 200 New Zealanders. Those reports are meant to be reviewed, and they are not being. So I just think that's an absolute shocker. And it's good to see actually some coverage. And again, kudos to the Herald, because they're the only ones, as far as I'm aware, that are looking into this. And that's also something that should alarm you. This is an egregious failure in the system. It's not the end of the world. Even though I'm opposed to euthanasia, I don't think, if I'm trying to be objective, this is a knockout blow by any means. But it's pretty serious. But have you noticed that no other mainstream media that I'm aware of has reported it? So kudos to the Herald on that one. But I thought somewhat related, which was funny, is for all the work that David Seymour's doing trying to promote euthanasia, he's also, this cropped up I think this morning, he's been setting up this Ministry of Regulation, or for Regulation, and it's been outed now that it has some of the highest paid civil servants across the country. And I just thought this was ironic, and I suppose my observation is that this ministry is in effect his little plaything, because what I've noted is there's been a lot of talk about it, enormous amount of money going in to run it. We have a failed former chief executive of Oranga Tamariki leading it, sort of the merry-go-round of civil servants. Now we've got this coming out, that these are some of the highest earning civil servants in the country. And the real kicker is, and I don't know about you, I don't think they've done any work that anyone's aware of. And I'm suspicious we'll be able to do much work, because lots of people have come and gone in politics talking about, regulation and changing things. But to me, it seems like an enormous and inordinate amount of money that's going into this ministry, that for now we've seen absolutely nothing come of it. And look, could stand corrected. Maybe in a year's time it'll have done amazing things, but it seems an enormous little, fiefdom. And it also strikes me as, doesn't really keep the minister all that busy, which is, I suspect, what is wanted. So anyway, I just thought that was an interesting aside. Speaking of ministers, we've got other ones in trouble at the moment. So this is Andrew Bailey, the minister. I think he's of small business or revenue, but anyway, he had a crack at someone, as I understand it from the reports, who turned up to a factory on like a Friday afternoon and he claims, having a bit of banter, telling them, why are you still here at work, and just says F off and so forth. The person involved has taken deep offence and has written quite a long letter of complaint to all the political parties about it. So he's in quite a bit of hot water around that. I mean, look, first and foremost, one should mind their P's and Q's, really. And yeah, I mean, I've known Andrew for a long time. I suspect, can't prove it, and it's not here to defend. I said, there's time for silly banter and there's a time for being professional. But I know Andrew well enough. I suspect from knowing him, this was more meant to be banter and light-hearted, but it clearly hasn't been taken that way. And I suppose that's one of the lessons for all of us, isn't it? And certainly to myself at times, who thinks he can be funny. You've got to be careful about what you think's funny and how it's going to be perceived by others. Although there's been some suggestion that this person who's complaining might have some political motives involved. But I suppose long and short, the lesson for all of us, myself included, is be careful when you think you're joking. And I suspect strongly in this case, it's a case of thought it was sort of a funny comment at the end of a long week to this work, why are you still here, head off, but still not a good look. And these are the sort of distractions that government doesn't like. And then speaking of, politicians and their behaviours, I just don't know what's going on. This is the Maori Party and Winston Peters exchanging barbs left, right and centre. I can't even remember now exactly what the words were that were being exchanged, but they're all just basically claiming each other's a bully and threatening. But I thought, probably 2 points around this. So I think it was Winston Peters was making some comments to do with Te Reo Māori or the Kohanga Reo or something, and the Māori Party's taken offence. I don't think the words were egregious from either side, if I remember. But, there are some sacred cows, it appears to be these days, and if you ever want to talk about the treaty or Te Reo Māori or anything, it becomes very sensitive very quickly. But I thought it was 2 points. One is we are beginning to see, I think, too much and irregular trading of barbs and stupidities across the House, and no political party sits above this. I think actually they all need to dial the rhetoric back quite a bit. We're not quite at the American level, but they're not actually acting like rational adults at times. And it's happening too often, I suppose, is what I want to say. It was not as if it was perfect when I was in Parliament, nor was I. There's always funny banter and interjections and heckling, but we just seem to be getting into this regular stage now of people saying offensive things or stupid things, and then people far too ready, and that's my second point, far too ready to take offence. And I've been meaning to write about this a bit, but, offence has become a currency in New Zealand now. It's why we have so many news articles of people complaining about something, because they get rewarded for it. And I don't mean financially, but, I'm offended has become sort of such an important catch cry. But the other thing I thought was quite striking with this is I thought it was ironic that the Māori Party, who themselves have acted like bullies and thugs, one only needs to think about how they've acted in the House many a time, from dress standards to how they treated taking their oaths to the first day of Parliaments to comments that they've made. I mean, including even on their website, they're the first to cry racist, but the Māori Party had sections on their website, was it last year, claiming that their DNA or biology is superior to anybody else's. I mean, these guys are just, let's be blunt, they're hypocrites. And I suppose that's my second key point from this particular story, is, the Māori Party crying bully boys is a bit ironic, from the likes of the Māori Party. And maybe jumping into what is other topics, I mean, it's slightly in that treaty area. You might remember last week the Solicitor General, Una Yagos, I think that's how you say her name, and apologies if I've got it wrong, put out new prosecution guidelines. So this is to all the Crown prosecutors. So if everything from drunk driving through to murder, you have to go to court. Hopefully we better say quickly to everyone, hopefully that doesn't apply to any of us. But she put out new prosecution guidelines that said actually that prosecutors need to take the race of people into account, particularly if they're Māori. And to someone like myself, it's a whoa. Justice last time I looked is meant to be blind. We all know what Lady Justice looks like. The famous statue of the woman blindfolded and holding the scales. And despite all the Orwellian double-speak from this Solicitor General, which was saying, this is not race-based or ethnic-based, it all was. I mean, it's just one of these absurdities you get with modern woke people who've drunk the Kool-Aid is, it's not this, and then carry on to display how it was. So the guidelines were very much, if someone's Māori, then you need to take that into account to decide whether to prosecute or not. And rightly there was an uproar from across the board, actually, to be fair. except for those who are cultural Marxists or who believe in critical race theory. And that's probably one of the big alarms, actually, regardless of what happened next, is that this critical race theory, this is dividing people based on race, while then saying we shouldn't be racist. Again, this is the Orwellian doublespeak and stupidity in play. Let's not be racist, they say, while then, propagating racist ideas. It's obviously entrenched, and personally, I'd love to see the Solicitor General be sacked. It's, I think, a major overstep in this case, and so it's not just about the particular, it shows a mindset. But look, she backed down. As I say, there was an uproar, and she backed down from what she had to say, which is good. I suspect there were some words had in the background very clearly to her, which is good and appropriate. Just not on. So good that it happened, good that there was an outcry, but I'd still like to see her go. But I will just say for people, it's not easy. The Solicitor General's appointed by the Governor-General on the advice of the Prime Minister, and because they head up the judicial side of our constitutional system, so think you've got the King, you've got Parliament, you've got the judiciary, police, there's meant to be a bit of independence there. So this is not like the Minister of Health that can sack the entire health board, or you've seen Simeon Brown's talking about potentially sacking Tory Whanau and the dysfunctional Wellington Council. It's a bit different with the Solicitor General, but all I will say is grossly overstepped the mark. And look, a couple of last very quick points actually, really quick points. It's mainly around media. Excuse me for a moment. And their reporting. We might just start with our local politics, as this popped up in the Herald on Sunday, and I just thought terribly mischievous. I won't go into all the details. Long and short, the woman on the bottom left got scammed. Scammers, I think, posing as Christopher, encouraging her to do these investments. But that's not the issue per se. But if you look at this headline and the imagery, that Luxon's tangled in the scam, you would think from the way that the headline reports is that somehow he's involved. Well, of course, he's not involved. He didn't have anything to do with it. He doesn't know anything about it. People have used a deep fake video of him, which has unfortunately then entangled this lady. Firstly, if things look too good to be true, they probably are. And secondly, I just think it's false reporting. Actually, just blatant false reporting to suggest that he's tangled up in this. If you draw the bow really, really long, you can make an argument of why he's involved, because someone took his image. But the way that it's reported, and this is what I'm, I suppose, belaboring the point here, is he's not tangled. He's got no involvement with this whatsoever. But for the ordinary Kiwi who's flicking fast through the newspapers or just sees the headline going, gosh, how was he involved? How did he actually become part of this scam? And so I just think it's just shocking reporting. Then another example I thought of shocking reporting is this. This is again the Herald. So you know that last week, Yahya Sinwar, the head of the terrorist organisation Hamas, an absolutely nasty piece of work, responsible for God knows how many hundreds, if not thousands of deaths, was killed. He was killed by the Israelis, by chance actually, which is sort of quite ironic. But by the by, this is how the Herald described it. They said it's harrowing footage showing his last moments. Now, harrowing is, well, I suppose, it's harrowing if it's sad. I suppose that's the key point, isn't it, if you know your English language? For something to be harrowing is to be sad and disturbing. And now, don't get me wrong, watching anyone die is never particularly pleasant. But I just thought this was a very injudicious headline by the Herald, that somehow the death of a terrorist leader responsible, and in fact you could make the argument is responsible for the tens of thousands of deaths currently in Gaza, because he's the one who set off this conflagration, is described by our New Zealand Herald as being harrowing. It's just terrible, they're saying, by implication, that this man was killed. And I just think that's wrong and sad. And then another example is this one. Our King Charles, Queen Camilla, they're in Australia at the moment, if you didn't know. And the headline again from the Herald screams that they are met by protesters. And so it's true, actually. They were met by protesters. I think they're, reading other reports, there were about 20 of them. But actually there were hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of well-wishers waving Australian flags, and all very exciting. So again, I just think it's fake news, and I hate using that term, but let's reflect it back onto media. It's just fake news. So yeah, were there protesters? Yes, there were. There were 20. And let's say there was 1,000 people at least celebrating them being there, but the headline doesn't focus on, hundreds of supporters say hello to the king. No, it's on 20 protesters. And guess what, of course, they were Palestinian protesters. It's like, yep, we know, they turn up to everything these days. It's just, again, misleading headlines, and it's the sort of stuff that frustrates, that really does frustrate me. So yeah, anyway guys, we're coming towards the end. Amongst other things, as I said at the start, I've been down in Queenstown with my reality check radio work, but actually Bob and I are going to Sydney this week for something called ARC, the Alliance for Responsible Citizens. So long and short, it's like a new community and international-led group of people who see real values in our philosophical, religious, cultural and political heritage in the West, and see that actually there's solutions to many of our world's problems by not only understanding what's good within our own Western culture, but how do we engage across the world. And if you know people like Jordan Peterson, Niall Ferguson, Philippa Stroud, if you know Speaker Mike Johnson, good night, I've just had a name blank. He's, Douglas Murray. Many people are all part of ARC. And there's a conference in Australia this week, so I'm actually heading over there. But if you want to know more about ARC, jump on to I interviewed Jared Holland, who's one of their spokespeople. So I had an interview with him last week. So just jump on to the realitycheck.radio, that's the website address, realitycheck.radio, and look for the replays. And Jared and I talk about ARC and what it's all about. But I'm looking forward to heading over. There's going to be everyone from, as I said, Tony Abbott. We're going to have John Howard there, former MPs. John Anderson, he was that deputy PM I did a podcast with recently. So lots of really, really good people. So I'm looking forward to that. Obviously, I continue doing my Speak Free show. I won't be doing one this week because it's Labour weekend coming up. But just to know, that's every Friday morning at 10 a.m. Bob and I are still busy doing our Substack, so this is Bob's. This is an older one because Bob's prolific. He's writing frequently, but if you go to substack.com and look up Bob's name or McBlog, you'll find his. And you can see both he and I have been focusing on the euthanasia question. And so mine's called On Point. Bob's is McBlog, mine's On Point. But if you look up our names, you'll find us. So we write a lot there, and on a whole lot of different topics. This was another one from a little while ago, a bit more philosophical, but there's a lot of stuff. And then we have our new teammate, James. He's been taken over from Tumby and running Pulse Point. So there's a lot of stuff, guys. I'm just going to throw a little video up, which will just give you a bit of a hint of all the stuff which is available through Family First now. As I say, Pulse Point's been run by James, which is pretty exciting.
If you're looking for news that you can trust, commentary on key family and social issues, and conservative conversations, go no further. Family First has them all. Monday nights, live at 8 p.m, Straight Talk with our panel. Tuesday mornings, live at 8 a.m, Solid Ground with Simon O'Connor. Wednesdays, watch for the latest episode of Pulse Point to drop. We watch the news so that you don't have to. Thursdays, live at 5 p.m, political playback with Bob McCoskrie and Simon O'Connor discussing the week in Parliament and politics in general. Plus, there's regular episodes of social commentary with McBlog and interviews on family matters throughout the week. You can watch these live and also on demand on our website, Facebook page, X, Instagram, LinkedIn, and on our YouTube channel. Finally, something worth watching that you can trust. Go to familyfirst.watch for more details.
So no shortage of content. There's the word. God, I'm losing my English already this morning. Content. So no shortage of content. And on Thursday, by Thursday night, when we have political playback, Bob and I will be back from our Aussie trip. It's very much an in, out, and away. So we'll update you on that ARC trip. But in the meantime, guys, you have a wonderful rest of the day. Thank you so much for joining me. Look forward to chatting next week.